Welcome to the Thing About Witch Hunts. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
And I'm Sarah Jack. Today we're talking with Jennifer Tozer, a librarian at Pueblo Community College in Colorado, who has created something truly special for her students and community this fall.
Jennifer has designed a comprehensive educational program called Witch Trials, Accusation to Exoneration that runs throughout October. What started as her personal fascination with witch trial history has grown into an impressive month-long series featuring poster exhibits, author presentations, virtual tours with the Salem Witch Museum, and discussions about modern witchcraft accusations.
We love how Jennifer has tackled the challenge of bringing this history to life when traditional museum exhibits weren't available. She's built everything from scratch, creating visual displays that walk visitors through the Salem witch trials while connecting them to ongoing issues of injustice today.
Let's hear how a librarian's passion project is helping bridge educational gaps and reduce stigma around both historical and contemporary witch hunts.
Welcome to the Thing About Witch Hunts podcast, Jennifer Tozer.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Could you please tell us about your work and expertise and what you've been working on?
Yeah, so I am a librarian. Currently, I work at the Pueblo Community College Library. I did work at the public library for 5 years, so I have been in the library space for quite a while. I'm new to the PCC library, though. At the college, we don't do as much programming as we did at the public library, but I get to do some of that. I also work with the students one-on-one, help them with research. I go into the classrooms and do orientations on the library, what the library offers, that kind of thing. And I do get to still do some programming, and so that's where this comes in.
Yeah. What should we know about Pueblo?
So Pueblo is a really kind of melting pot of people. It's a very unique community. Even though it's a pretty good sized city, I guess you would call it, it has a very small town feel. So there's a lot of people who've been here their whole lives. It's very, it's just very eclectic. There's a lot going on. It's very Hispanic oriented. The college is a Hispanic serving institution as well. We have a huge Hispanic population here. So yeah, just kind of a little bit of everything. It's in the southern part of the state. So yes, it does get very hot.
Yeah, my parents were Pueblo residents for 15 years or so. I hope I'm getting that number right. My mom was an educator over at Colorado State Pueblo. And so I got to visit and spend time in Pueblo. And yeah, it's amazing. So I was really pleased when you reached out to tell us about what you're doing, which is what we're going to get to now, because there's such a special place in my heart for Pueblo and its history.
It's exciting.
What inspired you to create your fall programming that we're going to discuss here?
Really, it was just a lot of it was my own personal interest because I'm new to this role and I bring a different experience from the public library. I really wanted to start creating different things for the students that weren't just purely about their classes or me going into the classroom and talking about what the library can do. I wanted some kind of just more like relief for the students. So more fun things, different things. I did some like stress relief yoga last semester, like around finals time, and just like different offerings that you wouldn't really think about at the library. But because I have a very eclectic background, so I am a certified yoga instructor as well, I thought, well, why not bring my interest into the school? And I'm sure some students and some faculty and staff would also be interested in it. And so I had asked my supervisor if she would be okay if I just did some different things this fall. And she was like, go for it. Might as well try it, right? I have always been fascinated with witches, the witch trials, witch history, all of that. And so that was just my first thought. I also love October and Halloween and all things Halloween. And so I knew I wanted to do something around Halloween, but I wanted to keep it very educational and historical and relevant. And so that's why I went down this road.
And so one of the first steps you took was researching to see where you could go and with your planning. What has that been like?
So it was interesting because I thought because it was such a Salem witch trials are such a huge topic, right? And they've been talked about. I mean, I remember learning about it in high school. We read The Crucible, that kind of thing. So I reached out to a couple different museums, the Salem Witch Museum, Peabody Essex Museum. I can never say that the way Massachusetts people say it. I try. My husband's from Massachusetts and he always corrects my pronunciation. So they don't say Peabody, they say Peabody. Anyways, I'm working on it.
Yeah.
But and some other museums that had exhibits in the past, but they didn't really have anything that was like a traveling exhibit, which is pretty common nowadays. And I figured they would have at least something that I could borrow for a limited time. Being an educational facility, I also figured they'd probably be more open to loaning things, but there really wasn't anything out there. Obviously, there's not a lot of artifacts that survived from the witch trials, but there's really not even any like replicas. There's not a lot of information other than some of the court documents, which are very hard to read. I'm sure you both are familiar with that. But I think it's funny because they always say, oh, they don't teach kids cursive nowadays. They're not going to be able to read historical documents. And I'm like, I can read cursive and I can't read historical documents. They are very hard to decipher. So I thought that's not really what I was going for. I wanted more of a kind of a visual and something that would keep the students interested and entertained and they could go through and learn, but also have these visual references. And there just really wasn't anything. So I just decided to build it from scratch.
And I'd really love to hear more about what you've built. What is in the program? What are the elements you've put together?
So because I wanted that visual aspect, I decided to go with more like a poster exhibit that you would walk through. We've done a couple of these when I was at the public library about Pueblo history, or specifically there was one on the steel mill. And so that was where I got my inspiration. They had these like informative, they were really big, but they were big posters and they would have some photos, but some information. And so you could walk through and go through the timeline, learn about different things and come on the other end. So it was almost like going through a museum, but really it's just a poster presentation. But I do still want to have like artifacts and some visual things. We have some display cases. I also wanted to incorporate that. And so as they're going through, there are different posters that I've designed on different aspects about the witch trials. I do focus on the Salem witch trials mostly, but then I do talk about also the relevance today and what your organization is doing, things that are still happening in the world today, because we think Salem and we think it was forever ago. And what does that have to do with me? And if you think about it, it really wasn't that long ago. And these things still happen today. And I just don't think a lot of people know that. So I really wanted to start with something that people would be interested in and might draw them in, but then also talk about why it's still relevant, why it's important to talk about these things and learn about these things and what's happening today. And then I also wanted to just distinguish between what people who identify as witches today and what that means versus what we're talking about when we're talking about Salem and how they thought witches had literally signed a contract with the devil and it was evil and it was all of these things versus people who practice witchcraft today and the differences there and the stigma still around that, and try to reduce some of that stigma and that like fear around it, I guess.
And you've been to Salem. Did that inspire you that you could share that message and reduce the stigma?
Yes. So I have always wanted to visit Salem, but growing up, we didn't do a lot of vacations. We definitely did not go north a lot. My mom hates the cold, so we would always go south when we went on vacation. And so my husband is from Massachusetts, like I mentioned, and I did finally get to go back there. And it took me 40 some years. And so I thought, why not try to bring this to people who, like me, maybe couldn't get there or haven't been able to make it there, and just try to bring part of that experience to Pueblo and to people who maybe can't get out. I know there's a lot, especially here at Pueblo Community College, we have some lower income students and families, and they can't always go to all of these places. And so one of my goals when I was at the public library, a lot of it was bridging that technology gap, which we do here as well. But I also wanted to just bridge that gap that not everyone can have all of these experiences, but it's the next best thing, right? So you're bringing it to the students. And so that was my hope with that. Oh, and get to go back to Salem this fall. I'm actually going right before this program. I'm going at the end of September, beginning of October. I'm going to go back to Salem only for a couple days because the trip was supposed to be to Vermont for like some leaf peeping. I've always wanted to go to Vermont in the fall. And it's my anniversary. And so we were going to go to Vermont. And I asked my husband, well, begged basically, can we please go to Salem for a couple days? So he just knows that's a thing now. Whenever we go to the East Coast, we have to go to Salem. But it's very exciting because I'll get to meet some of the people I've been working with and tour some of the places that I didn't get to go the first time I went. And so I'm very excited.
And I understand that part of what you're bringing to the students also involves a virtual tour with the Salem Witch Museum.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Salem Witch Museum does what they call, I think it's like a virtual field trip kind of a thing. And they had different aspects that they focus on. And so the one that we chose, I worked with a professor here who teaches criminal justice. And so we thought that would be really fascinating to bring to his students. And the criminal justice professor and I decided to do one of the virtual tours that they had. It's the Salem witch trials, specifically 17th century law and how that played into it. As you both know, there was a lot of things that we don't accept now. They were guilty until proven innocent, and they accepted some evidence that we would never consider today. And so I think that'll be really interesting for the criminal justice students to learn about specifically. And we were hoping to do more, but they are kind of expensive to purchase, and our budget for this was very limited, which is, again, why I'm building it myself. And so we are doing a couple of those classes through the Salem Witch Museum. And I've worked with the education director there, and she sounds great. And I've watched a few that they have on their website. So unfortunately, we're not able to record these or share them, but we are going to share them with the specific criminal justice classes, which I think will be really meaningful for them. And so that was why we decided to go that route. But they have so many great options, like women's history around the witch trials and just the witch trials in general. They have things on there for a younger audience, older audience. Like, it's great.
Fantastic. And can you tell us about the other presentations that you are bringing in for the programming?
Yeah, well, because I'm a librarian, I thought I really wanted to work with some authors who have talked about this topic. And so one of the authors I'm working with is Kathleen Kent, and she wrote the book The Heretic's Daughter. It is not completely factual, but it is like a historical fiction novel. And it is all about Martha Carrier, who is actually Kathleen Kent's ancestor. So she wrote this book around Martha Carrier, who was one of the convicted in the witch trials, and she was hanged. And so she wrote about that and just the story she had grown up hearing about, but then tried to really write it in a realistic way. I don't read a lot of historical fiction. It's not really the genre I tend to gravitate to, but I really enjoyed the book. And I lucked out because I was following her on social media. And when I reached out, she was like, I would love to come in person. And I was like, oh, I thought she lived in Texas or wherever it said on her website. But she, I guess, had recently moved to Colorado. So she's going to be here in person, which is great. So I'm very excited about that because it will be in person. I'm hoping that we get great attendance for that. It's also going to be offered hybrid. So like people can join virtually as well. And we're going to give a signed book away. So if they do come in person, they'll get a chance to win her book. And she'll be here. We'll do like an author reception after her presentation, and she'll sign some books. We don't have books for sale because we don't do that at the library. But if they bring their own book, they can get it signed. And so that's going to be super exciting. And then I also have another author, Daniel Gagnon. He is actually a Massachusetts resident. So his presentation is going to be completely virtual. But his book, A Salem Witch, it's all about Rebecca Nurse. So it's basically like her biography, everything from where she started out coming over to America and her whole life story. And then it leads into how she was accused of witchcraft and tried and eventually hanged and then exonerated after. So it's like the whole story of Rebecca Nurse. It is a fabulous book. I just finished it recently and I learned so much just that I didn't even know. And I've been reading about the Salem witch trials for so long, and you learn something new every book you read. And so he is going to be presenting virtually, and we also have a signed copy of his book to give away. So that is going to be really fun. And then Sarah, you are also coming to present. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. You talking about your organization, what you all do, which I think is just great. And hopefully we can get some interest in this and in the cause. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for including us and giving us space in the community to raise awareness about witchcraft accusations today. That's awesome. I'm just so excited about everything that you're putting together. And I know you're going to meet Dan in a couple of weeks when you go out there.
Yeah, hopefully. He said he would give me a whole tour of the Rebecca Nurse homestead. He's on the board of directors there. He's in the historical society. Like, it's just going to be so great to kind of see Salem, but also have an expert there, like tell, because before it was just me and my husband's not that interested in it, right? So I'm just kind of trying to figure things out and drag him along. And so it'll be great to meet someone that I've been working with virtually for months and hopefully get to tour. I did not get to go to the Rebecca Nurse homestead the first time I was there, so that'll be really exciting.
Yeah, we've been fortunate to have Dan as a guest on this podcast a couple times. He
Yeah.
came and spoke about Rebecca Nurse and then George Jacobs Sr., who's also buried on that property somewhere.
Yeah, and
So-
I initially thought he was a descendant of Rebecca Nurse, but I guess he isn't. He's just very interested in it. But you, Sarah, are a descendant of Rebecca Nurse. Is that right?
I am. And that's one of the things that propels my passion around this topic. I too thought he was a descendant. I remember he was one of our very first guests, like in the first dozen. And I was so excited that we were going to be interviewing him. And I had just read his book and I tweeted something out calling him a descendant. And I got a sweet little private message correcting me. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I think that happens to him a lot. But Rebecca is so meaningful to many people. And I have discovered that even beyond Dan, there's just so many non-descendants that gravitate towards her story and want to honor her.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating story. Like I said, I learned so much. And honestly, I think you could write about each of the victims, a whole book, because there's just so much. They were all so different and there was so much involved. I thought, well, how are they going to write a whole book about one person in the witch trials? But, each person's story, I feel like really needs to be told. I hope more of these come out because I thought it was great and it was very educational, really well researched. Obviously, Dan knows what he's doing and he's a history buff. History was not my forte. So the fact that I'm even doing this, I've learned so much. And really, it has kind of gotten me interested in history. And so I'm hoping it does the same for some of our students or faculty, staff. I've mentioned it to a few of the staff here and I found out things about them. Oh my gosh, my wife is super into this. She's going to be so excited. She's going to come to all your presentations. And so things I really wouldn't have known about people just by talking about this and getting that interest up. So it's really kind of cool.
As you've been learning about the Salem witch trials, what are some things that have surprised you?
Oh gosh, I think one of the biggest things that's stuck with me is this story about Dorothy Good, the little girl, Sarah Good's daughter. And I think she's referred to as Dorcas a lot. Mistakenly, they thought her name was Dorcas. So she's usually called Dorcas in a lot of historical documents. But I guess recently they've discovered her name was Dorothy. She was only 4 or 5 years old and accused of witchcraft and left in this prison even after her mother was hanged and just affected her for her whole life. There was a really good presentation on the Salem Witch Museum because Rachel, who is the director of education of the Salem Witch Museum, was one of the ones that kind of discovered more about her and her whole story and that she just had mental problems for the rest of her life and just how it really affected her. I think that story, I guess being a mother really affected me. And that was one of the craziest things I learned that I had never even heard about. And so that was definitely really interesting. But there's been a few things that I learned. I didn't know about spectral evidence. That was fascinating. The fact that it was even accepted and someone could just say they saw your specter and you could be convicted on that. Yeah, so many interesting things. I tried to put them all into my exhibit, but I'm sure I probably couldn't capture them all because there's just so many. I'll probably have to do this now every year.
That would be awesome. If you could pull that off with your energy and time, I know that people will be lining up to see the new additions. I've really been impressed with your resourcefulness. Like you said, you started from scratch. And when we first connected in April, I was so thrilled that you were interested in doing this. And I was, I hated knowing how difficult it was going to be for you to build up some of your the vision that you had for this, but you have done that despite the barriers. And I really like what some of your panels are focusing on. And you don't need to give everything away, but do you want to highlight any of the messages from your storyboards?
Yeah, I think my favorite one is actually the first one I designed, which is the myths versus the facts. Because as I was researching it, I realized there are still a lot of myths and misunderstandings around the Salem witch trials. And so I try to highlight the main, I think I've got about maybe 12, maybe 13 on there that are pretty well known myths about the Salem witch trials. And then I talk about the facts that actually happened. One, as you know, is the ergot theory, where there was the fungus and the wheat. And apparently that myth just will not die. And so I'm going to try to help with that. But there are others. People thought witches were burned in Salem and they were not. And so just all of the different myths. And again, I learned so much about it that I thought, why not share this with others? So that's probably one of my favorites. I also have the one about modern witchcraft and witches, which I really enjoyed making as well. I'm really fascinated by that. And just all of the, like I said, the misconceptions around that and some of that fear and stigma around it, and just trying to break that up. I thought that was another really fun one to design. But yeah, I have several in there. I just started trying to create one that talks about what I learned from it and the most fascinating thing. So I do talk a little bit about Dorothy Good on that one and some other fascinating tidbits that I learned as I was researching this. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm trying to make it a little more interactive. I'm going to try to have some, I don't know, thought questions on some of the boards where after they learn about this, they can take something away, just a question for them to ponder and think about. And so I'm trying to incorporate that, as well as a lot of the students, when they come in, can do almost like a scavenger hunt, we call it, but it's like a series of questions, and we'll just give them the handout. And basically all of the answers can be found in the exhibit, but it gives them, and then if they turn it back in, they get entered to win a prize. And so it gives them a little incentive to actually learn and go through the exhibit and read all of the information instead of just walking through and, oh, this is cool, and looking at the pictures, but not really reading and learning anything. And so we've found that that helps engage students a little bit more, and they get a little bit more out of the exhibit. I'm working on that kind of simultaneously as I'm building it. So yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot, but it is just, it's really going to ripple into the student experience. That's one of the things about witch trial history. You have mentioned today, it's their individual stories, and you just learn so much understanding what happened to them in the courts and then learning about their lives. And it's so applicable to things we experience today with injustice. And so I'm just really grateful that you dug your heels in and created this for your community. Is this available to the public to stop in and look at?
Yes. So the exhibit will be open to the community, but because we are a library and we're on a campus, we are also a quiet study space. So even though we've advertised in one of the local papers and we will invite the community in, they will have to be respectful of their noise level. But I'm also offering to set up some appointments after hours so they can come through if maybe it's a larger group or they just don't want to worry about the noise level. Maybe they have younger children, or like I said, like a group of people who want to discuss it. I'm offering that. And so I might be staying late a few nights this October. So we'll see. But yeah, I wanted to open it to the community, but I also didn't want to impact the students and their need for having a quiet study space on campus. And so it's trying to find that balance.
I was just thinking how it might be interesting, and maybe you're already thinking about this, but won't it be interesting to see what questions come in maybe before they see the exhibit, after they see the exhibit? Are you going to find the same question or comment coming up a lot? Are you going to have a big variety? That's like being on the inside of this, like you are, you're really going to get to enjoy that aspect, that initial impact of the information on the students.
Initially, I was worried too that we might get some blowback from the community. I mean, anytime you mention witches or witchcraft, again, there's that stigma and that fear around it, which I'm trying to get rid of. But you always get a little bit of pushback from the community. So I was a little worried about that, but I made sure that I talked this over with the president of the college and that he was on board with it. And we were okay to advertise to the community and bring the community in. And I think just having that support from the administration here at the college is great. And just knowing that some of the events that we're going to put on might cause things like that. Like October, there's also a banned books week. And we do get a lot of pushback usually during that time about the banned books. And so we're really trying to keep it very unbiased and educational. And we're just saying, these are the facts, even around the banned books. Like this is what is happening. This is what it means to be a banned book, because people really don't understand what that means. They're like, oh, but I can go buy it on Amazon. And it's like, well, it's been challenged. It's been pulled out of libraries. That's what that means. And we have some of the most challenged books. But I also feel like this witchcraft and witch trial exhibit really fits in with that, because even though it's not a banned book, it's just one of those things where there's that kind of, I don't know, almost like that misunderstanding and that fear and that really just not knowing enough about it. And whenever we don't know about something, we're afraid of it. And that just causes a lot of problems. And so we're really trying to keep it very educational, very open-minded. If people come in with questions, I'd be more than happy to sit with them, talk to them about these things. And so I think it'll be well received. I was a little bit nervous, but I do think keeping it that unbiased educational aspect, I think it'll be well received in the community. So I'm still excited. A little nervous, but excited.
Yeah, no, it's so fantastic. I love what you're doing there. And I love that you've designed it to be thought provoking so that people come through and they are looking for the answers for the questions. And then at the end, you're posing something to them to get them thinking. What do you hope that visitors take away from the experience?
I guess just sort of what I took away from it, building it, honestly, just maybe they learned something new that was fascinating. Maybe they get more interested in history, dive a little bit deeper. I just think maybe having less of that fear around which is witchcraft, some of the things that they maybe didn't understand before the exhibit. So even if just one person walks away with that, I will be happy.
That's awesome. I was just thinking too, one of the aspects of the Salem witch trials, which you and I haven't discussed, is there was banning of publications during that year.
Yes, I learned that in Dan's book, and it was really fascinating because it seemed very similar to things that are happening today, where they were only banning publications of like one side of it. So if people were advocating for the trials, they could publish, but if people were kind of against the trials, they were not allowed to publish it. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so fascinating. As we've learned, if you control the media, you can control what people think and what people know. And knowledge is really powerful. And I think, especially when people are trying to erase that knowledge, it's really, really important to get it out there even more and, let people know the true facts and the true history. And yeah, that's one of the reasons I kind of love the whole story around the Salem witch trials. It's like my husband asked me, he's like, why do you like Salem? That's where they hung witches. Like it's not a good place. And I think for me, it's one of those places and one of those times in American history where we have actually, as Americans, acknowledged that we messed up, and they came back after the fact. They made restitutions. I mean, yeah, they're not going to ever bring back the people that were accused and hung, but it's a start, and that they could acknowledge their wrongs and put up a memorial and come back after the fact and basically apologize and say we were wrong and try to make it right, which I don't feel like as an American society we've done a lot in our history. We really never came out and talked about slavery, and a lot of people still try to brush that under the rug, or the Trail of Tears with the Native Americans. And it's really sad. And I think that's one of the things I love about Salem is even if it's a horrible story, at least they came back after the fact and could acknowledge their wrongdoing and try to make it right, because you can't ever undo the past. But if you don't acknowledge it and learn from it, what are we doing? Right. So that's why I really love the story of the trials and just that's why I tried to tell the whole story through up to when they were exonerated, which I just recently learned about. I think the last one in the Salem witch trials was recently exonerated, and I had never heard of her, Elizabeth Johnson Jr., and that it was a small class that just put this petition together to try to get her exonerated. She was like the last one. And yeah, I thought that was just so fascinating that even a couple years ago, we're still trying to make it right, but they are trying to make it right. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, that was just 3 years ago that Elizabeth Johnson Jr. got exonerated, the last person convicted of witchcraft at Salem to be cleared.
Yeah.
And then it was a year after that that Connecticut absolved all the people who were accused over there. And we're still seeing efforts in other states and around the world to try, like you said, it's important just to acknowledge the past. You have to acknowledge it before you can move forward,
Yeah.
learning from it. So I love that you're incorporating all that
I'm
in
trying.
your experience. Yeah.
Yeah, you've just created this, it's such a complex story and there's all these layers and you really, I'm thinking of it like a bouquet. You went out to this field of wildflowers and you got just the most beautiful samples of that field and put this story together or this bouquet together. So I'm
It's
grateful
just
as a
a small
descendant.
part, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping it will at least lead into maybe them doing their own research, learning a little bit more. I really hope people read the books because I do think that is going to be great. We were going to try to do like a little book club on campus around that, but it was just too hard to get everything together. But hopefully, at least some of the faculty or staff and students can read the book beforehand and really have those meaningful conversations with the authors too, because I thought the books were really just fantastic. And like I said, I learned so much. And so I hope that others can do that as well, even if it's after the fact, because we did order a few of the books for our collection. So even if that just interests them and then they check out the book and read it, I think it'll be really great.
Awesome.
Yeah. I really love Kathleen Kent's work, The Heretic's Daughter. And then there's a sequel to it, The Wolves of Andover. And they're both so entertaining. It's not an exact replica of the history, but it puts you in that situation so you feel what the characters would have experienced.
Yeah. And yeah, I thought it was well done where you do feel immersed in that time period. It's written in that, I don't know what you would like, older dialect, and you do feel like you're in the period, which is hard for some people to read. I know if you go back and you read Jane Austen or Shakespeare, you really have to start to get into it. But as you do, it does put you in that time period and you're a little more immersed in it. So I thought that was really neat. I've read some other witch books that are like that and they're written in that older English. And yeah, I think it's super fascinating. So fun.
What have you named the program and what dates is it running?
So the exhibit is called Witch Trials, Accusation to Exoneration. I feel like that title encompasses what I'm doing a little bit better. And it will be up the entire month of October. And anytime that we're open, the library is open Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5, and then Friday, 8 to 3. Anyone is welcome to come in. And then, like I said, I will take requests to do an after hours if needed. I'm hoping most of those are on Friday after 3 because I really don't want to stay here until 9 p.m. every night. But I will because I do think it's important to get the message out. And yeah, so the whole month of October and then the specific talks that I have going on. So Sarah, you will be here on Thursday, October 9th. And then Kathleen Kent will be here on Thursday, October 16th. And Dan will be virtual on, it's a Wednesday, I think, October 22nd. I'm looking at my little calendar here. And then I don't have any presentations the week of Halloween because I always do what I like to call Halloween, where we dress up all week because I love Halloween. I have so many costumes. I could probably dress up all month, but I'm going to limit it to a week because not everyone loves it as much as me, but I think it'll be really fun. This year, we're doing it more like a spirit week. So hopefully the students will get involved and we have a crazy hair day and that kind of thing. And then I do a costume contest. And so students can come in. We're going to do it on the 30th because there's not a lot of classes here on Friday. So the 31st was out. But on the 30th, if they come in costume, they can enter the costume contest. Last year, we had a lot of fun with that. And so, again, it's just going to be a whole fun month. And I'm just very excited to get the word out about the Salem Witch Trials in general. But just, I love all things witches. And so that's what it's going to be about.
If you have a program about witch trials coming up, let us know so we can spread the word and offer any support we're able to.
Please reach out to us if you would like to develop a program and just don't know where to start.
Thank you for joining us. Have a great today and a beautiful tomorrow.